This week's guest is NoorJehan Tourte, a storyteller and a group executive vice president, brand strategist at healthcare advertising agency Area 23. NoorJehan, tell us more about you.
Thanks, Deneen. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, I am a first generation born to Indian immigrant parents. I grew up in Southern California, and I think my entire um, youth was defined by trying to find my identity and reconcile so many different cultures that were being taught to me or impressed upon me, and trying to find that balance and figure myself out. And that took me down a lot of different paths. And I think staying in corporate America as a woman of color and then climbing the ranks into a leadership position, in some ways is very much a accumulation of that search for identity that overtook my youth.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you mentioned Indian, being born to Indian immigrants. I have to tell you, India is my number two international audience. So,
I love that.
and so, by continuing to have guests who are from India, have an Indian experience, and we'll keep them there. They actually were number one for a while, but Bangladesh came in and just knocked them out.
Oh, okay. I would love, in some would say we're all the same land, all the same
Yeah.
people. So I love that.
Right. Because I'm like, let me look this up. Like, where is Bangladesh in relationship to
Yeah.
India?
Neighbors.
Yeah, so that's exciting. Exciting to share. So you sign your emails with designer of my catastrophe. What does this look like for you?
I know. I'd say I'm a designer of my own catastrophe. And I think it's because I don't know if you ever feel this way, Denise. There are many days or many moments where maybe my life feels over scheduled or oversubscribed, or I have a sudden inspiration to pursue a new creative pursuit. And sometimes I just sit there and I go, NoorJehan, why can't you just want less? If you just wanted less out of life, like maybe it'd be just simple. Like, why is it just
Mm,
not sitting home and making dinner and watching TV after your 9 to 5? Like, why isn't that enough for you? And I don't say that critically, because I do
right.
think that that is such an important thing to attain in life, however you define your contentment. But there are people and that are so content with, okay, I have reached a stage in my career where this is my career, these are my hours and my schedule, and I wrap up work and I enjoy my dinner with my family and I enjoy my weekends. And I love that for them. I love that they're content. And my contentment is defined catastrophically, I guess, because I feel like I derive this contentment from, throwing my hat in the ring and all these different things. Or if suddenly I decide I want to resurrect singing, I used to be a singer, then fine, I'll figure out a way to do that. And that's why I say, I guess I'm just a designer of my own catastrophe. But so those days I question it, like, why can't you just be okay with things being a little more simple? I remind myself that for me, that definition of simplicity won't keep me happy.
So, I want to sit with this for a moment, right? Because women of color in particular, we're always on the go, right? We're always doing, thinking we have to do, right? And so listening to you, it is buying into that whole thing of doing. Also, what I heard you say is, and you sign it, you're the designer, so you choose that
Yeah.
going. You're making a choice. It's not like it's thrust upon you. You're making a decision that, hey, this is how I thrive. This is how I get joy, and what makes me happy is in the doing. Would you agree with that?
100%.
Okay.
Absolutely agree with that.
And I want to make that clear, right? Because, it's okay to do if you're choosing to do. And then also make sure you're getting that rest, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. But now I want to know, like, how does one live a painstakingly cultivated life? Like, what is that, and how are you living that?
I when I talk about a life that you've painstakingly cultivated for yourself, I, in my own experience, and for everyone, right? It's all relative. All of our experiences matter. I feel like I went through a lot of um, these phases where I thought I was disappointing people, letting people down. Some would describe it as being really rebellious or just completely, turning my back on culture or religion or expectations that were put on me. And that was painful.
Mm,
Those were painful periods for myself and for loved ones and for people I really cared about. And now when I look at my life, even some of the most painful choices, if I hadn't made those, I wouldn't be here.
okay.
So I find so much enjoyment in my life. And I'm so grateful even for the hard days now because it's a life I'm choosing. So during those hard days, I have to remember you painstakingly cultivated this life.
Mm,
I'm not saying that there's not bad days in this life, but this is the life that you really carved out for yourself. And that helps me get through the tough days. Right? Like today, it's been a really, really tough day. But it's a life of my choosing. So I think that makes those tough days more palatable and motivates me to get through them.
yeah, when I first saw that, I thought, very similar to me, how I, empower women of color to live a dream lifestyle. So when I saw that cultivated life, I saw it as as the same and similar, like you're choosing that life. You're choosing it and you're creating it for yourself. But the key is you and that you're in charge of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are three things that women of color can do to tap into their power and their voice?
Okay. First, I think if this they're not in any particular order, it's what's
Yeah.
coming to my head as I'm thinking is what I often see us do as women of color is we again, this is my observation. So
Yeah.
if I'm generalizing or if it doesn't, some people cannot relate. This is just my observations that sometimes we resist taking that support and that help from people that are not of color or from white men. And we are in sometimes a dynamic in a world where there might be white men that are our managers or that are our leaders. And figure out a way as a woman of color, a person of color, to make that work for you and help you move advance. Don't resist that. And I say that because when we resist some of those things, it's like it's something that my mother-in-law said that always stuck with me. And she just said it to me last weekend again, where, we want to change it. There is a difference between changing lives and changing the world. And sometimes when we resist maybe the white male leader at our, corporation or company that could help us advance our careers, that's maybe because we have these goals of changing the world. But maybe we have to change our lives first before we can change the world. And if that person is a good person that can help you advance, use that to your advantage. And you will still be helping and lifting up your community and women of color in a different ways. So I know that was long, but that was my first one, but I'll pause there.
Yeah, and what I like about that is I'm the type of person who, like work from the inside out type thing, right? So as opposed to like tackling this big, huge
Yeah.
goal of the world and more so lives, right? Let me impact one person, and let that have that trickle effect. And and of course 10 people, 20 people, but starting from there out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like sometimes the and is somebody else because we all have our own lanes, we have our own strengths. So for me, it's the lives and for in to trickle down for the world. And then others is really just to go ahead and tackle that world problem. And the thing too with what you're saying is, you know, you read about in leadership, you read about with mentors, you do want different, you want all types of mentors, right? You want people who are in higher positions. You want some people who are maybe in different, lower positions or the same.
Yeah.
You want white males, you want white women, you want people who are different for the same reasons that we want, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? It's the similar reasons, because we know that the different voices together are powerful, right? And there's so much to learn. And so here's the thing with that. Absolutely, you can hear from someone different than yourself. It goes back to you choosing what you do with that information. Like, you don't have to take
Exactly.
it. You don't have to take it. Like, you
Exactly.
listen to it, and then how it applies to your life and what you want to do in your life, that then you make a decision as to, okay, yes, I'm going to follow this, or okay, I'm going to follow it a little bit differently, and
Uh-huh.
or know that if I don't follow what this person says, there could be consequences, and possibly I won't get something that I want because I'm not doing it, the way that it was suggested.
Exactly. But I think, yeah, it does go back to choice. And if you think about history and a lot of historical key figures in life, like they went beyond their communities, absorbed, learned, they were sponges, absorbing how other communities, other people are doing things, and they took it back to their communities and they adjusted to how it well fit their culture and their people. And I think that, so that sounds like what you're saying too, Deneen. And I find that I can't wake up and expect that suddenly every new company that I interview at is going to have women of color leaders. So I've got to do my best in those environments and not resist, but figure out a way to make that work for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with what you just said, it reminded me. So I was at a it's a STEM conference for Indigenous people, right? And I remember talking with someone, and I asked, "So, what do you plan to do after you get your degree?"
Yeah.
And the person said, "Go back to the reservation." And so what I did with that information, I said, well, you know what? If you were to get an internship with the company I was working for at the time, you can be in position to learn how to connect with people who will help you when you go back to the
Mhm.
reservation. Right? You will learn how to interact with those people who are various levels and in different industries, etc. But you take this information and you take it back to your community, and you use it, your reservation, and you use it the best way that it fits. Right. And so what I was doing was helping them to see how that thing could definitely benefit them, because people are not necessarily looking beyond. So going back to, your recommendation,
Yeah.
they're not necessarily looking beyond. They're making assumptions as to what they, information they may get, or a whole bunch of different things, and not necessarily realizing that there's definitely power and potential in learning from that individual.
Cannot agree more.
And so I know you said that was the first one. So what's a couple other ways?
I think for women of color, and well, I'm learning this a lot more in my adult life, is so again, if it resonates with those that have a similar path, amazing. If not, hope it's just insightful. I resisted my own culture
Mm,
for a while. And I like, for example, right, my name, it's NoorJehan. I'm in this past couple years have been reclaiming that because when I started school, I shortened it to Noor. I thought it would be easier. And at work, it was just easier in corporate America to be Noor. And it's such a beautiful name that was given to me by my grandfather. And I'm in this, phase of just reclaiming it and really celebrating my culture. And I think part of why I was not as much as celebratory about the cross sections of so many different cultures that make up who I am is because I was trying to, figure out how to be an all-American girl in Southern California and figuring that out and like how and that stayed with me.
yeah.
And even in my career, I'm like, okay, well, I'm American, and I am, and I'm really proud of that. But being of color and being, having these cultural roots that are so rich, I think the more we can like embrace that and lean into it, I think I just feel so much more comfortable and I feel like it makes me dynamic in my thinking. So just, you know, don't self-silent and don't let anyone silence you and make you feel like you have to silence that part of your lives. Like that's a big deal. And I love sharing more about it publicly with my peers, with my teams. And it gives me confidence. And I think it's a different kind of confidence that I didn't have before. But when I'm proud of my culture, it gives me a really uh, a different channel of confidence.
Absolutely, because you're bringing more of yourself, right? You're not
Hmm.
having to hide any parts of yourself. And I mean, and the thing about it is, it's a superpower to
Yeah.
be that. And if you speak another language, that's a whole nother. I remember being in at a Hispanic event, a Hispanic Latino event, and a woman who had a heavy accent. She, mentioned how people talked about her accent. Here's the thing, and she said it, and I'm saying it. But can you speak more than one language? You know what I'm saying? No, you can't. And that's a beautiful thing. Like she is bilingual. She's able to speak fluently with an accent in English and fluently in Spanish, right? And how many of us, typical in the United States, are speak more than one
Yeah.
language? And that's a beautiful thing. So absolutely embrace all parts of yourself, right? And then people want to know all of you. They want to know that part of you, like, oh, that's interesting. I would love to know more about that. And like for me, two things that fascinate me is I love the matchmaking that happen in the Indian culture, right? I love that. I love that. And I also love the weddings and the whole ceremonies where, several
Yeah.
days. I mean, all of that is just beautiful. And to see that is absolutely beautiful. So, yes, congratulations to you for making a decision. Again, you deciding that, you know what, I'm going to show up as more of me.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's so funny you say that. My husband is not Indian, but
Okay.
we did have a wonderful Indian portion of our wedding celebration, and I was really excited to invite some of my colleagues and open up that world to them, and have them see, how my parents are, and how my parents honor their faith, and how we celebrate the culture. It was really beautiful, and it was awesome.
Nice, nice. And I want to kind of go back to this, right? Because, again, when you were talking, and how you pretty much suppressed, a large, huge part of you, what came to mind was code switching. So we talk about code switching a lot in the Black community, which is similar, and it happens in other communities, of course. Um, but basically, now you're assimilating, you're changing
Yeah.
of yourself, you're changing your hair, you're changing your speech, you're changing your name, you're doing all of these different things because you want to fit in as opposed to standing out and
Yeah.
or letting other people in. So when you were doing this, did you feel a heaviness at all of having to do that or choosing to do that?
When I was doing
When you were
when I was
more, just
suppressing
more and not your full self.
the heaviness I felt, I didn't I think I was running away from the culture.
Yeah.
So I felt more guilt, and I was exhausted from feeling like I was living these two different lives. So that's what I felt, because because what you're talking about too, I think is when people realize, like, I don't want to suppress this. I'm so proud of this that I don't want to suppress this anymore, and that feels heavy, but I wasn't proud of it. I was running away from something, and then I was constantly living two lives of, like, okay, what I'm doing with my parents on the weekends, and I don't really need to make that a big deal at work. And then at work, I was really keeping quiet about all of our nights out and fun nights and whatever I was doing from my parents. And I think that was just exhausting.
Yeah.
It got really exhausting. And I just constantly felt like I was um yeah, just living two different lives.
Yeah.
And so, and it's funny, I don't define my finding myself as because I got married, but I think our wedding celebration really was symbolic of just these two different worlds that I lived for a long time coming together, and the acceptance I felt from all the different worlds. And it really was that turning point.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's one more tip you want to give us in order to
Yeah.
tap into our power and voice.
I think, and it's something that I feel like us women of color, we probably feel a lot of pressure, whether it comes from our community or our parents, and especially if we're ambitious and pursuing careers, like, not to mess up, right? Like, like you have to always be a role model. And, I remember that so much. I was just talking to my dad a couple days ago, and I was always angry at how much pressure that they put on me. Don't mess up. Everyone's watching. Every eye is on you and waiting for you to mess up. So don't mess up. And that just felt like so much pressure. And I feel now it instilled a work ethic in me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But my tip is for, especially in our careers and we're trying to navigate that what I have found is sometimes others, because everyone's navigating DE and I, Deneen, like people might inadvertently stereotype that everything that they're saying, the women of color or the people of color, everything they're saying, ooh, okay, it's coming from a DE and I perspective, and I have to like be, mindful of how is NoorJehan going to feel if I say this, and that's exhausting for all of us because we can sense it. We can sense when people are on their tiptoes around us. But
Right.
I think that my tip is to, you know, be just focus at work too. Just especially if you're early on in your career, focus on your craft,
Hmm.
focus on the skills. And the more you can focus on being the best copy editor or like the best graphic designer or that you can be, right? Or like, you're the best intern at the new fashion house, like whatever it is, like just focus on the skills
Yeah.
because you're going to be reminded for the rest of your life that you are a woman of color. And I think that the more we like what I how I manage my days is when they're getting to be sensory overload, I have to remember the quality of the work that I am putting out will people poke holes in that or will people be like, this is some good work? That keeps me going. Like I focused on my craft,
Yeah.
and that way when I'm in those meetings where there might be other people who might be feeling a little bit more sensitive about DE and I, it doesn't cloud my thinking. I don't hold back because I worry that if I say something, people are going to think, oh, she's saying this from a DE and I perspective or a woman of color perspective, and she's feeling marginalized, so I have to listen to her because that stumps us. I see that stump us as women sometimes. That am I being listened to for the right reasons? And I just think that the more confident we feel about our functional skills that we are bringing to the table in the workplace, the less we're going to be clouded by those thoughts. So that's my
Yeah.
other tip is I know it goes back to my dad saying just like work hard, but like
Yeah.
don't feel the pressure like you can't mess up, but just, you know,
And
doesn't
it's
matter what
an
color our skin is.
yeah, I will,
Work
with
hard.
that, I want to say it's an and you definitely want to, bring your best at all times, and you want to be as much of yourself, your full self as possible. And something came to mind when you were talking. So I was thinking back to a conversation I had with Brietta Calloway. And that was a previous episode. And she introduced me to something that I hadn't heard of before. And it was a stereotype threats, something like that, to whereas because you think there's a threat, that you act a certain way, right? Maybe you don't do something, maybe you don't ask a question, you hold back because of the fear of the threat, right?
Yeah.
And so kind of like what you're saying is not to operate from there, just operate in your excellence, right?
Yes.
And then like I'm adding, and still be yourself, be your proud woman of color self, your Indian self,
Yeah.
your Black self, whomever you are, and always show up as yourself, and you do that work, right? Because you're there to do work, and it's an and. I look at most things as an and. So if anyone wants to learn more about the stereotype thread and a conversation that she and I had, that's strategies for professional growth, navigating challenges on the path to success, elevate your career journey. And that was with Brietta Calloway. And that was just, we had that conversation on February 8th. Actually, it was episode 144. But yeah, that reminded me of that because that was something different and new. Because when we think people are going to react a certain way, it kind of shapes how we
How
behave.
we're going to act. Yeah, absolutely. I love that though. If you're operating in your excellence, I think like I give myself permission to be myself because I feel like I'm operating in my excellence when
And
it's
that's a beautiful way.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that. And it goes back to your designing your own catastrophe, right?
absolutely.
It makes me think of that. So when we were talking about that, I brought up breasts and said we would get back to it. So self-care is an underutilized necessity. So talk to us about the importance of taking time for ourselves and the power in the pause.
I'm learning about that a lot more. I took on this new role at my company, and being in a leadership role, and really having to exercise empathy and really, really making sure that people feel good and feel like they have work-life balance, at that their mental well-being is sound. Um, it's really of the utmost importance to me, because I know what I feel like when I'm starting to teeter on I'm too overwhelmed with
Mhm.
work. And I have really, really adjusted where my Saturdays now are my Saturdays. Like, I just don't live by a to-do list. I don't think about all the things I have to do. I just enjoy my Saturday. And that is new for me, because I used to be the type of person that was, and the other thing too, I used to wake up at like 5:30 a.m. every single day to try to get everything done that I wanted to get done. And as I'm getting older, I value the sleep more. I value my rest. And I also have to remind myself every day when I go to bed, I was like, gosh, I don't mind what didn't get done. I'm actually very happy that I'm like getting into my bed and I'll get a good night's sleep. And that self-care, it's actually reminded me that I'm still quite productive in the time that I give to being productive. So I almost felt like I was too scared to test that theory. So I was like, every day has to be scheduled and I have to be doing things and I have to wake up early. And once I got the courage to just test the theory that if you gave yourself some rest, are you still getting enough done that you feel productive and that work is moving forward and that your goals are moving forward? Once that answer became yes, I just I look forward to my Saturdays, and it's good, because then I'm getting quality time with my partner and with our family and with friends, and I'm much happier that way. And I have more perspective to bring to work because I'm living a regular, normal life that's not subscribed on that day or two.
Yes, and really thank you for sharing it, right? Because based on our conversation and what you've said, you do operate in the do. Again, you're choosing to do that. And then
Yeah.
at the same time, you weren't necessarily practicing self-care. And so now you're starting to, and you're seeing like, oh my God, this is a beautiful thing. Like, okay, I can do this and still be productive. I can do this and still operate in excellence. And as a matter of fact, I'm probably, leveling up because I am taking that pause. So I'm glad that you're having that experience, that you're able to share with our listeners and those who watch.
A-
So
Absolutely.
so I honor my late sister, author and poet Soul True by asking about dreams deferred, which is the title of one of her books. Please share a dreams deferred moment.
Ooh, Deneen. This one's got me thinking. A dream deferred, right? So in my interpretation, it's a dream I've deferred, but a dream I'm still pursuing or still wanting to pursue. Is that correct?
Yep. You know what? Yes. If that's how you choose to answer it. It could even be a dream that you had and you decided for whatever reason, like, oh, okay, I'm over that.
Okay, well, you know what? I think I like that one better. I used to have this dream of um, quitting my corporate job and packing everything up and living as like a global nomad. And this was well before the pandemic, right? And I used to have that dream that I could just move from country to country because I love to travel and I just want to see the world and experience every culture and just live and write along the way and figure it out. And this wasn't like a childhood or like gap year dream. This was like in my 20s and 30s, like late 20s, 30s. And I deferred that, and it wasn't by my own choosing that I deferred that. Um, but I'm so happy that it was deferred, because you change as you get older, and there was probably this little part of me that knew that wasn't for me.
Mm,
Like, I like structure. I do like the stability that structure brings. And while I have so many creative pursuits, I do like the structure of the corporate America world that's all I've ever known when it comes to work. And I like that feeling of accomplishment. And I think that's when it hit me. I said, I like feeling accomplished. And a lot of what I was hearing about people that were traveling, the comeback is hard. The comeback is a come down after you've gone and like left reality for a year and you travel the world. Then you come back and it's a come down because you suddenly see your peers maybe have been doing other things or have advanced in their careers or their family lives. And I think that would have been hard for me. And I also really love looking forward to our vacations and our international travel. Like I love, like it feels like I enjoy it so much more because it felt so hard earned and that's just my perspective, that it felt so hard earned that I really just go out there and I enjoy it. And I didn't have to like quit life to go see the world. I can still go see it.
Absolutely. And you know what? I love this conversation because you're definitely bringing a different perspective from other conversations, right? And I think you're representing a lot of women who live the way that you live, right? And have thoughts the way that you're thinking. And for me, living a dream lifestyle is travel. So like you saying that, oh, I wanted to do this, that's something that I would, love to do. Um, and it's something I'm able to do. However, I choose to break it up, right? So like
Yeah.
travel, I may even just go for a day and come right back, right? The longest that I probably stay away is maybe 4 nights because I just don't want to be gone that long. But I'm gone. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm
Yeah.
so often, and I do love going and connecting with people and learning from people and being away. Also, when you come back, it's, like I was in Baltimore this past weekend, and it's like you're disconnected from things. So when
Yeah.
you come back, it's like, okay, now let me get up to speed, right? Here's the deal. I'm okay with that. So it goes back to you individually, what you're okay with, what you want
Yeah.
out of life, and how you want to design that. And like I said, I love your perspective because there's plenty of women out there who are listening or watching who are in that same lane with you, right? And then there may be others who like aspire to be in my lane, or even what you said you wish,
Yeah.
because I would like to do an RV. Like I would like to go on an RV, like maybe do a week, drive across. That's something that I would like to do. And I may end up doing that this summer. But again, it's about what you want out of life as long as you can keep things moving. So right now I kind of shifted into living a dream lifestyle, which is what I empower women of color to do. How do you just how do you define a dream lifestyle, and then how do you live a dream lifestyle?
Yeah. To me, the definition of a dream lifestyle is contentment. Right? Like I cannot paint a picture of anyone's dream lifestyle other than my own.
Mhm.
But what makes it a dream is I feel content. And I think that was something that I never thought was possible, this feeling of contentment. I didn't think I actually accepted that I might never attain that. And so that always felt like a dream. Like, whoa, I marry someone of my choosing that's not in the community that my parents accept. I forge my own career path with many, breaks and detours along the way. And somehow I'm really happy and I'm still pursuing all my creative pursuits. I never thought that would be possible. It felt like a dream.
Yeah.
Travel, I felt like once I gave up the idea of like living abroad for indefinitely, I would not get to see the world, but I still am getting to go on these amazing travel experiences. That's a dream. So I'm living that dream lifestyle, but none of that would have happened without finding contentment. And so when I'm in my most mundane days, it's still a dream lifestyle because I have to remind myself, am I content? Yeah, I'm content. Contentment doesn't mean like your happy days, sad days, tough days, great days, but you can still be content through all of that. And that to me is a dream lifestyle, Denise, because it's one I never thought I could actually attain. But in doing the work and figuring out what it was going to take to get to contentment, um, I'm now living it.
Yes, and that's pretty much what I do, coach women and empower them, is to first dream, then decide, design, and then drive towards that dream life, whatever that is for you. And to also know that it changes. It doesn't have to stay
Yeah.
the same way. Like for me, number one is travel, and then I add on to that, right? And so that's what others can do as well. So, NoorJehan, what would you like to leave the audience with before we wrap?
I think the only thing I'd want to leave you with is something that I always say is just, you know, wouldn't you rather stumble living life than squander it standing still?
Love that.
And just make the mistakes,
Yeah,
keep failing. And because if you're not making mistakes, that means you're not putting yourself out there and trying. And I would not find contentment without having made so many mistakes and just continuing to try things.
love it, love it. And I actually have to share. So my mom told me yesterday, she was so it was a character from something that we watch. It's from Sisters, which is by Tyler Perry. And so there's a character on there, Gary. Gary happens to be on something else. But anyway, so she was saying, yeah, someone had said the other day, like, if you're not hated, like on a TV show, then you're not doing your job, right? So if you're not stumbling, then you're not living. So stumble your
Exactly.
way through your dream life, right?
Heck yeah.
Well, NoorJehan Tourte, thank you so much for lending your voice on Women of Color in Intimate Conversation, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me, Denise.
Absolutely.